Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Mikhelashvili, CEO of Amedea Pharma, and I welcome all of you to a kickoff of our new webinar series called Designing New Ways of Working for High Performance in Medical Affairs. We're live currently on Facebook, LinkedIn, across Instagram as well. So welcome you from all over the world. So a little bit about Amedea Pharma, okay, and why we started this new monthly webinar series now, December, at a time when all of us are looking forward to a successful year next, in 2025, more decisions that lead to those outcomes that we all desire, right? And increasing that value and impact communication of medical affairs. So Amedea Pharma is an analytics and organizational change agency that is strictly focused on helping life science companies improve their performance across its entire spectrum, from customer all the way to employee experience. Okay, those motivational factors that also drive performance. So we use a unique formula that integrates both elements of data science and sports into the daily fabric of all business to drive stronger performance and efficiency on your teams. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more, about how we integrate those elements into stronger performance and better decisions ultimately. I've spent 20 years in 7 different companies in medical affairs, and I've seen how medical affairs teams transform treatments for both mainstream and rare disease conditions. I've led medical teams to generate direct growth of business outcomes as well as patient outcomes. And I've seen many of my peers and leaders do the same as well. However, we are notorious for not recognizing all of our contributions on the business as well as to the healthcare community. So we're going to discuss all of those intriguing types of questions that are on your minds in medical affairs and driving our value and impact next year. And so I want to introduce our speakers, who are senior leaders in medical affairs with decades of experience leading operations, field medical affairs, medical information. Jeff New, former director of digital innovation and excellence at Novartis. Luz Ramirez, with international experience as a medical director, former medical director at Amgen, also led operations, medical affairs teams across many different companies. Alex Pasek, who's also a trained physician like Luz, and who has had significant roles in various different software companies, such as SAP, as well as charitable Helmsley Trust Foundation, and was a former project manager of the Foundation of the National Institutes of Health. Okay, so he's an expert in management consulting as well. So I want to welcome their diverse experience and perspectives today. Please say hello to the audience. Luz, Jeff, Alex, great to see you again.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone again. Happy to be here.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tim. It's great to be here.
Hey, everyone. Yep. Thanks, Tim.
Great. Yeah, we're kicking off this monthly webinar series. So you will see, our speakers, for the next 5 months, and maybe we may have some more guests as well. But today's agenda includes reviewing our latest research and benchmarking data to see what those gaps are in measuring and communicating medical affairs value, and then addressing 3 elements that we need to illuminate, right? The purpose, understand why we need to capture performance in more detailed methods, clarify why we need to have a more real world perspective and visibility of our workflows and how we collaborate on those desired outcomes. Then ultimately translate those contributions into the company or product success. the recognitions and reward of our contributions. And so then towards the end of this webinar, we will also preview a new solution that Amedea Pharma has launched, the Ancora Decision Assistant platform, to help you raise the bar on those critical decisions next year and beyond. Okay, now I want to invite all of you who are joining to share your comments. Okay, we will address them. The speakers will be glad to have a discussion and a debate as well. This is a very important topic that I think a lot of us are thinking about today. And so I hinted at why medical affairs is somewhat misunderstood and undervalued. And let's look at some research. This is the latest global benchmarking report from the Medical Affairs Professional Society from last year, from July of last year, that surveyed 51 pharma companies and showed that most of them do not analyze how activities lead to outcomes, 70%, and 59% do not believe that the metrics they use drive their decisions, which renders metrics, how we measure performance, meaningless, right? And which also decreases the quality of our decisions and forecasting as well. When we think about all the performance data that we collect, it comes in different formats, from field medical, from publications, from medical education, but we do not have all of the contributions in the data that we use to analyze or report that performance data, right? And so a little bit more recently, in November of last year, we had a survey that they circulated and among 54 medical affairs leaders. And it showed a clear gap between what our leadership in medical affairs considers that they should be measuring, which is those bottom line clinical outcomes, how we improve or how we impact clinical outcomes directly. 44% believe that they should be measuring that particular outcome, for example. But we're currently measuring our activities, our efforts, right? 35% without really tying them to outcomes. Okay, so there's a clear, persistent gap in what we are currently measuring in terms of performance. Now, from the perspective of physicians and leaders in the healthcare community, they are clear that they want to partner with medical affairs, with pharma and biotech. 94% of them actually feel that they're overwhelmed by all of the volume of scientific data that also guides their decision making. And so if you look at the second bullet point, we see that they want to solve the problems in healthcare together with medical affairs, which is great news, right? And so how we do that, however, in the very latest research that I was able to find, which was a live survey in a webinar in October of this year from 100 medical affairs leaders, again shows that most of us are not very successful, okay, in measuring our impact on clinical outcomes. Only 10% are successful, and still they believe in in-field medical affairs who interface with leading physicians across the globe that they should be changing clinical practice, right? That's the type of metric that we should be measuring. And so I want to start by speaking to my guests, our expert panelists, and ask them what you think about this research, these trends, the gaps that I just talked about, as well as your experiences. Why should we be looking for new ways of working and measuring performance today in the environment that we have, right? Where the mechanisms, the products are becoming more complex, and it's a very competitive, demanding biotech ecosystem. Jeff, maybe you can kick us off.
Okay, yeah. Tim, I agree with you. I've been in the industry about as long as you have, and I think this is a perennial topic. What do we measure, and are they the right things? And I love your lens of sort of looking at it through the sports world. And I think, most companies over the past several years, have had aspirational statements, vision statements, that they want to be world class, sort of similar to elite athletes. And if you look at the way elite athletes train and the things that they measure that lead to those outcomes, that's the mindset that we have to have. And so I 100% agree with you. And it takes some work to identify, the things that we measure to make sure that they're contributing to the outcomes that we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it looks like the value of having a performance trophy alone in medical affairs no longer cuts it in 2025, right? You actually need to be an elite performer, right? What are some barriers, though? What are some of the questions that you hear about? Okay, metrics mean more competition, or how do we really communicate our medical value, which is an art, into outcomes? Are there certain persistent questions and maybe the new ways we can address them? Misconceptions, maybe. Luz, Alex? Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Luz. Make sure you unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. Yes. Yeah, if I can jump in, there's always the same question: is how can medical affairs create an impact, or how can we show our value of our teams? Our teams are always doing a lot of work out in the field, and it's not enough how to show their impact and how to link it to outcomes. So it's always the question of how much information should I put in, and how can I translate that information into something that is actually very valuable, that very high top performing teams can actually show their value. So it's always a question of what types of KPIs you need, what type of place you want to store it in, and how I'm going to analyze it. And analyzing it sometimes requires, it depends on your company or not, but we need to have solutions that help you out on this. We need to have solutions that help you and give you ideas on how to transform the value of and the impact of medical affairs. Sometimes we don't know how to translate every single activity that we do outside, and we need some help to do that. We've been trying to struggle throughout the years to do that, and there are some ways to do it, but I think there's a lot more to come, and with artificial intelligence, even more. So we need to be open to have change in all of this.
Yeah, and I want to.
Tim.
Go ahead. Yeah, I want to just pull up the word purpose there as well. Why are we measuring performance? Yeah, and go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was just gonna sort of piggyback on what Luz was saying, and your prompted question on the need for a tool for this, to increase transparency and also to increase engagement. I think employees, especially in the medical affairs space, should have their work and their progress sort of be very visible to senior leadership for all the value that they're driving. Certainly that's been the case with a lot of different parts of organizations in pharma and across the board, to be able to show through a dashboard sort of what the team is working on. But medical affairs, I think that's still a huge need, and a standardized, simple system to address that is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my experience, I've really never seen my peers who are excited about capturing their performance data. And maybe perhaps one of the reasons is we haven't really linked it to incentives, right? To decision making, to strategy, right? In one simple platform. And I also want to invite questions again. I want to remind those who are in the audience, right, to provide what's to their questions, with their thoughts, what's on their mind, in terms of how we need to do more with less right now, right, due to changing the regulatory environment, shrinking profits, right, in the industry across the globe, right? So is this now the good time to, is this maybe the right time to demonstrate, and to study performance in greatest detail? certainly, there are many more options with which we can measure our performance today than ever before, right? You can measure someone's performance using, you can measure their clicks, how just but is it really relevant to every role, or how do you use all these different types of analytics, social media views of an educational program that you execute, for example, right? So how do you really choose the right metric and the right data, because our performance now is more exposed, right, than ever before. What are some suggestions you have? Yeah, Luz, there's a little bit of background noise there. I just want to. So I muted you for a second there before, but anyway, yeah, Luz, Jeff, Alex. What are some thoughts you have on how to choose the right data?
Yeah, I think, Tim, companies have done a pretty good job, identifying strategies that they want to use to lead to the outcomes that are desired, and then those, and you usually do this annually, and it results in a list of tactics, that roll up to those strategies. But that's a lot of times where it ends. We don't have granularity. We either did the tactic or we didn't, right? And so I think finding new ways to measure the contribution toward the completion of those tactics can help show how we're contributing, or show companies how various parts of medical affairs are contributing to the overall strategy. And it takes some work. I mean, it's going to vary a little bit, from company to company, from therapeutic area to therapeutic area. But that's what I see as missing is a way and a place to capture those contributions.
Yeah, and I'd agree with Jeff there, Tim, and also mention that the need for a solution that's able to update real time, sort of what the progress is super important. Too many times, in the dynamic ecosystem right now, we have meetings every 6 months to a year, but that is very slow. And having these in real time is just be super helpful to show, sort of, as Jeff was saying, how the activities relate to the strategies.
Yeah. Yeah, so from my experience, one of the biggest. Oh, go ahead, Luz. Would you like to?
Sorry, I'm having a small jet lag with the audio. I wanted to also add that it actually depends a lot on how you want to, on the strategy you are actually using. Depending on your strategy on medical affairs, for example, I'm just thinking, if you put it to the practice, I'm just thinking, if my strategy is right now to do a survey with doctors and get the data from it, then my KPIs are going to be very particularly associated with what types of results I'm going to get from them. Then if I go out and do another type of strategy, saying like, if I have a safety issue or things like that. So you have to be able to customize absolutely every single KPI in order for your strategy. That's something that we really need. I see very little generalization of everything. If you customize everything, it actually gives you better results, and it actually it helps you to install the different activities that you need to do, or to increase performance.
Yeah, I would certainly agree that metrics are a moving target, right, across different cycles, of the product development, for example, right? And so, from my experience, those companies that analyze performance in greatest detail were the ones that raised new standards of possibilities and new benchmarks of what a medical affairs professional can accomplish. And where we had that visibility, not only from the team level, but also from the trainers and the medical affairs team members as well. So analyzing performance data in greater detail and taking into account how the needs change and the strategy change, like Luz just mentioned, and that brings me to an analogy. Think of KPIs as endpoints that you use to design in a clinical trial, right? Which ultimately should lead to an outcome, such as 5-year free survival, right, in a cancer study, right? And where you design different hierarchy of endpoints in a statistical hierarchy that are more or less predictive of that outcome, right? So that KPI should be on that line that you see there, right? It should describe the relationship between the activities and those outcomes, right? The activity in this case being a modality, for example, of an endoscopy that you use for that organ to measure the KPI being tumor burden, for example, right? So tumor burden may be a KPI, but you would have to continuously monitor it over time to see whether or not it indeed is the best endpoint or KPI, for example, to consider in a study. So if we kind of approach metrics as we would a clinical trial, we can, and continuously monitor it, we can maybe perhaps improve the meaning of those metrics as well. Or in a second kind of analogy or example that may be familiar to many of us in healthcare, if you consider yourself being a steering committee of a treatment guidelines, which grades the level of evidence, right, or certainty or confidence in particular data or research, and provides you those graded recommendations, right, that are based on these kinds of data science principles, where you don't only report positive outcomes, but also you learn from failures in research, right? You learn whether or not a particular activity predicts, is correlated, or actually directly causes that outcome, right? In this case, we are creating a feedback loop, right, in medical affairs, such that that KPI actually sits on that line and describes that relationship between activities and outcomes. Now, the second lesson that I've personally learned that I wanted to share with you is that our internal operations, behaviors, and workflows are just as predictive of company and product success as is our technical performance with customers. Yet most organizations avoid them, which leaves many blind spots, right? And so we have many metrics with which to measure our performance with customers, right? But we usually use pictures, which leave a lot to interpretation in terms of our internal operations. We don't have the time, right? That we really should be devoting to understanding how much time we're spending in which kind of activities in order to therefore forecast better and set goals that are more realistic of achieving the outcomes that we need. And so what these blind spots, they lead to inaccurate forecasting, right? We've seen BMS, we've seen a range of different big pharma companies lay off thousands of employees because of the workflow, right? The AI, all this technology is shifting our workflows, right? So, this is one of the root causes of inefficiency. And so, as we look ahead to 2025, we need to have a more real kind of front row seat, if you will, to the full performance, to everyone's workflows, how they collaborate, right? Because there should not be a line between them. Because how we collaborate with clinical development, with sales, also determines whether or not we're likely to meet those goals, right? And be successful as a company. So what if we were able to measure both, quantify, right, our not only external performance, but our internal operations, right? We can implement a new continuous quality improvement system in medical affairs. Any comments on some of those lessons that I've personally had and the gaps before we move on to the last question? on the reward. Any comments?
Yeah, well, I'll just agree with you. I think, that's something that we really haven't seen is what you were mentioning about the internal KPIs and really, looking at that closer. I think that's an untapped potential.
Sure. And in that example that I provided earlier, where I, led an initiative, a head-to-head analysis against largest market leader in that field. After 2 years that it took us to convince our leadership to do that, and we published that head-to-head analysis as presented as a poster, that led us to do internal training to the entire sales team, right? And so that's an internally facing activity, right? That's cross-functional. That's nevertheless directly related to turning the trajectory and of that company, as well, and adding access for patients to the next generation product. So,
what I meant by that, though, Tim, and I think it bears pointing out, is that these are not new things. These are things that companies are doing now. We just are not. We don't have a way to measure that, or we're not doing it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And so, how do we clarify, right, the contributions that we are making, and how do we tie them, connect them to strategy, to reward, and to recognize our colleagues and our teams in a way that allows them to understand both the purpose, why that real-time progress is important to monitor, and ultimately to understand that they're now they may receive more opportunities for training, for promotion, for various different educational opportunities as well. How do you really tie that to reward, and why is that valuable?
Tim, I can talk to this a little bit. I think we do have the systems that enable us to have KPIs from one side, KPIs related to strategy on the other side, and others related to performance. But we struggle with uniting them all together and analyzing them all together and see if there actually makes sense using them all together, which I do think that there must be a way that we can actually analyze the data better and get it all together in a way that it can be more efficient for any company. For example, if you have a group of MSLs who have done a great strategy and a great, for example, way how to deliver the message of one medication, and then you see that it actually helped and it was a very successful strategy. Sometimes I don't have enough KPIs to show the team, a great leadership team, to say, hey, we should replicate this into another case, for example. So in those types of cases, we do need all that data, and we do need all those things that actually help make decisions. And that's how you create the impact that we started talking about at the beginning. But it's not easy. We need to have central platforms that can actually help us do the research and not only interpret everything, so we can actually get better results and convince our leadership teams that, hey, these are good things that we're doing and we're having an impact on them. But it's challenging. I have to tell you, it's very challenging in real life.
Yeah. Thank you. And so let's, put all these concepts together, right? The elements of purpose, why we need to really measure data in more elaborate ways, right? The progress, a real-time progress, measure it like a sports athlete would, right? If you hear sports athletes speak about competitions, right, they celebrate their previous times, their results, their progress. They analyze not only the result of the race, but also how they practiced, right? What muscles they practiced, how long they spent in which environment, for example, right? And they share it openly with their other teammates or even competitors. Yet we really don't see that in medical teams. We usually consider capturing performance data as a necessary evil, right? For lack of a better term, right? Because we don't tie these concepts together, right? Of the incentives and the workflows that are also directly linked to the performance platform that we choose, and then ultimately your reward. Okay, so let's look at the Ancora Decision Assistant platform and how we integrate the elements of sports and data science into daily fabric of business. Okay, we have transparency, that we have to learn from sports, right? Where we are adding certainty during time of unpredictability, right? In this today's environment, okay, where you continuously measure progress, results, right? And the results are interpreted the same way by spectators, by judges, by everyone. The sports athletes prioritize one activity versus another. They have tiebreakers, they have photo finishes, right? They have accountability for not only performance, but for their sportsmanship, their behaviors. Okay, right? Such that if you have a gold medal athlete, right, that uses a performance enhancing substance, they're stripped of that medal. Okay, so sports teaches us to play by the rules, right? Rank and quantify all of our activities, that continuity, the quality of the data, right? They keep record books and they're proud of them. And then ultimately they make decisions, right? They analyze data in ways that haven't been analyzed before, now thanks to the technology as well, right? So when you put together those elements, right, of data science and sports, right, we will be able to drive more outcomes faster, and we'll be able to be more efficient as well. Okay, and so how do you really go about really putting all these elements together? Before we jump into the solution that we have created, here are the steps that you would take, and please feel free to make any comments and jump in, anyone here on the panel. But ultimately, the suggestion here is, for the new year, for 2025, as you think about goals and performance, is for you to simplify everything that you do and break it down into two categories. All the wonderful things that you do, the technologies that you have at your disposal, right? Such as scientific share of voice, social listening of digital opinion leaders, or KOL insights that you're gathering from the field, okay, using very intricate technology. All of those are great, right? But decide whether or not they're activities or outcomes. And think about those clinical impact outcomes. Be creative about creating, be the outcomes and as how you define them. Okay. Are they really activities, or are they just neat technological modalities that you have at your disposal? But so divide everything that you do into activities and outcomes, and try to describe that relationship over time. So what that takes is listing all of your external activities that you want to track by function, sitting down in the first quarter next year in January, getting your functional heads together and listing all of your external and internally facing activities, ranking them like a sports athlete would, or like a trial investigator would in a clinical trial, right? Rank them by priority so that people know where to spend time. Third, capture and link all outcomes. And we'll show you how our solution does that, right? Where you're forced to think about your performance as a sports athlete would, right? Or similar to, let's say, a pedometer that you have that is in the background, but gives you some notifications and tells you, oh, you've walked 10,000 steps last week, right? That links your activity to some outcome, right? And that motivates you to use it more. right? And then collect some specific customer feedback on the clinical outcomes. Those clinical outcomes that our surveys, that our latest research shows that you want to do more in medical affairs as leaders, right? Specific customer feedback, but also collect general customer and employee feedback as well, right? How our clinical development teams working with you, how are they rating your performance, your behavior, right? Across performance and behavior as well. And from the customers as well, who want to be partners with you, as the data from Viva showed. They want to hear from medical affairs and to be able to synthesize all that AI technology data, right? That is also competing with medical affairs in some regards, right? But that medical affairs, as PharmDs, PhDs, and MDs that we have, nurses, and many other, they have the training necessary to interpret that into decision making, and then recognize the progress continuously, and then start again, right? Modify your strategy accordingly, and then start again. It's a cycle, right? Quarterly cycle, or or even more often. And so the Ancora decision platform, Ancora decision assistant platform that we have launched is breaking down performance to such level of detail that you result in more outcomes. Again, you're able to improve your accuracy of forecasting, and also spend more time where you need to be, which is educating, learning, and teaching with your healthcare community, and decreasing the costs of administrative burden as well. So here are some of the features, okay, that I think are beneficial to not only our team leaders, who are able to now make better decisions and have a more realistic view of everyone's contributions, but from the user's perspective, they're now able to see, right, how their daily contributions improve the success, the performance of their company, how their contributions drive the success of the products and the companies, right? So because we're not a revenue generating function, we need to some way to quantify our contributions, right? Regardless of whether or not you are a sports athlete, or you like sports, you're good at what you do, or you're not, right? If you take a sports approach to it, chances are you will succeed and you will achieve it. So that's the premise, okay, behind the Ancora decision assistant platform. So here's a case scenario before we jump into the live environment of and preview the solution. This is a small biotech CNS product launch in March, first quarter of the year. And there's a very robust market access strategy, pricing. There's a lot of evidence generation, collaboration between medical affairs and headquarters-based market access teams. Medical affairs team is deployed early, 1 year before launch, to cultivate those relationships with scientists. And there is quite important feedback by the time quarter 3 comes around in terms of formulary addition and adding access for patients. All right. And so then we have these 3 scenarios that we'll look at in a little bit of detail, right? Despite all of that success, there are some signals of safety concerns from KOLs and investigators in some populations. Okay. And the team then collaborates, works together, and the solution provides you with the kind of visibility that you need, the realistic visibility of how they work together in one central platform. All right. But first, let's look at what are the benefits of seeing everyone's performance, not only field medical or medical information, but all other functions within medical affairs in one central platform. And I'm going to ask the panelists to also comment afterwards as well on that feature. And so I'm now sharing with you the activity impact, okay, by different functions. Okay, so you're able to see the relative effort, okay, that's weighed by impact. So these are not only activities, but they're efforts that you as a team lead are able to prioritize, right, by impact points, by quantifying particular activities relative to each other, right? A medical interaction with a physician may be something that you do routinely, may be worth 1 point versus an insight, which may be 2 points, or publication, or even more, right? 10 points. So you're able to see this type of leaderboard in a medical team, right? Which is designed in order to drive stronger performance. You have 3 members of the team who are in the field medical function, and you're able to see their impact growth over time as well. Okay, so that's the central kind of platform for seeing how everyone's doing, right? And these activities here are also centralized across the entire team, right? Because some teams may actually overlap in terms of their activities, but it ultimately provides you with that grading system using a proprietary formula, which helps you make decisions on where do I want to spend more time. Because it looks like, based on this dashboard, that the health economics real world study publications tend to lead to many outcomes, about a third of them, or a half of the investigated publication studies, right? And therefore, you have this type of a grading system based on activities that are weighed and adjusted based on the parameters that you choose, right, as a team lead here in this case, as well as the outcomes that you weigh based on the parameters that are important to you, right? How well they align with your company's objectives, for example, and others as well. Now, I want to show you how you would actually weigh the activities impact, okay, as a team lead across the entire function. All right. So you've done that in the first or couple of quarters, and you can keep adding different activities as the needs change. But as you can see, every single different function has their own specific lists of activities. All right. And the points actually correspond to the impact. All right. Which you're able to customize. So if there's, let's say, an FAQ document development, you can add a point value to it, right? And set benchmarks early on, right? You create benchmarks that are specific to your company, and you see the centralized kind of a platform of everyone's efforts. So I want to go back to Luz and ask her about the value there of seeing everyone's performance, not just field medical.
So Tim, I'm seeing this dashboard, and I wish I had at some moment in my career seen dashboards like this, where you can actually see the the way other people collaborate with you on a strategy. So medical affairs teams have a lot of different functions. So sometimes a lot of these functions are not even seen in the impact of the strategy finally. So this is a way, how do you, in a very graphical way, you show how everyone actually inputs time, effort, and their expertise to get a good strategy out there. So I think this is very helpful for someone who's like the leader of a team to actually either make decisions and also to think strategically for the next project that it's coming.
Yep. So you talked about collaboration there, and I want to, I think, continue and show, I think, something that is not always very visible, as you mentioned, and that is, how do you actually see who collaborates with whom on which outcomes, right? And so let's look at that application here. Okay, so the outcomes that are captured here in this case scenario begin in third quarter, because we all know how long it takes for these bottom line business outcomes to be achieved, right? But once they do, they have transformational value, right, to the entire company. And so as you browse through some of these bottom line outcomes, you'll see that there is quite a lot of success in adding the patient access to healthcare coverage, plan formularies, right? Medicaid formulary addition. There's a real world evidence studies that are actually published. Okay. And actually treatment guidelines recommending the product, right? Okay. And adding it with a high recommendation, real world evidence that I was just talking about. But then there are some signals, right, in which the safety concerns that I talked about earlier, okay, from investigators as well as KOLs. And what the platform allows you to see, and in this case, the team lead, but also the team members, is many different types of activities by different members of the team that are contributing to this outcome, to this new outcome, to varying levels of certainty. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, medical insights, formal group presentations, or a SWOT analysis or a situational analysis by different team members are being conducted to address these safety concerns, and they identify a particular genomic difference that explains why in a certain patient population this product just launched may be metabolized differently and lead to those undesired safety outcomes, okay, or adverse events, for example. Okay, and so this is how you see how the team mobilizes and addresses this addresses this concern and conducts a new study, form of PK study, a post-marketing study that actually confirms that difference. Now, I mentioned the different types of parameters of outcomes that we have. Okay, so in this case, this outcome affects one country, right, a nation, but based on the reach, the duration, how long it's expected to last, right? What objectives, the objective that this type of outcome maps to is optimal treatment. Make sure that everyone receives appropriate treatment, right? As well as the certainty. These are the different parameters that differentiate one outcome versus another. Okay. And now, as a team lead, you're able to see how other team members capture their activities and how they link their activities to outcomes. Now, one important note to make here is that you're required to link every outcome to a previous activity, and I'll show you how that's done. And so in this case, two different team members have done that already. They've linked their activities to outcomes that they've seen, and as a team lead, you may or may not agree with how they rated their certainty level, the confidence level that that activity did indeed lead to that outcome, right? So you approve it, in this case, and you approve another team member as another activity from another team member as well. Okay. Now, if you log in as a team member, I want to provide you with that view as well. Okay, and how you would actually capture an outcome. So we're going to log in as Gabrielle Martinez. Okay, so she's a HEOR professional in medical affairs, and she's already contributed other activities to the outcomes, but she may see, from her view, she may see some outcome that is one that she contributed to as well. Okay, so as we go back to the case scenarios, I talked about the safety concerns, but they also develop real-world evidence data. They generate a lot of evidence in different patient populations, right? And in the fourth quarter, there's a new European Business Development Partner announcement, in which medical affairs actually notices various different trends. Okay, various different trends in medical inquiries that are increasing from Europe. Okay, and they develop standard response letters. There's scientific poster presentations, as well as publications and an advisory board presentation that ultimately leads to this organizational new co-development agreement in Europe to expand its use in Europe. Okay, so Gabrielle Martinez has already one contribution here, but if she believes that she has others as well that contributed to that outcome, she goes back, and when she creates that outcome or when she adds to it, it automatically populates all the different previous activities that she may have engaged in. Okay. And it may be a final publication. Okay, in this case, and she's certain that caused this type of that contributed to this to this outcome. Or she may see another, if she hasn't had any previous activities, it would actually pre-populate an activities of that type. Okay, perhaps it's authorship, publication development or authorship that she has already captured previously, and she chooses what dates from that activity and ultimately adds that to that outcome. Okay, so that's where the analysis, the detailed analysis and the reflection of what activity really did I engage in that ultimately led that outcome, like a sports athlete would, right? That's where the application really is, and of tying the two together, activities to outcomes. So how do you see that flow work out in the real world in a medical affairs team, and what are some of the benefits or or concerns you see from the teams?
Well, I'll kick off with kind of an overview, I guess. I think the things that I would want folks listening to this to know are that a lot of the work, is being done. You've probably already identified the tactics, the activities that are important. So we're just looking for a way to measure those things. And this provides you a way to do that. And then just, an analogy to think about it. I think a lot of folks are familiar with like Peloton, and how you can compete, with others across, across geographic boundaries, I guess. You can see what everybody else is doing. And so this is kind of like Peloton for medical affairs. You can see how your organization is doing in those ways, but it takes it to another level because you can weight disparate activities and roll up to one common score.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. So in so what we're doing today here is we're really previewing certain features, but in the upcoming webinars and monthly webinars, we're going to dive into them in more detail. Okay. What I do want to talk about in the last few minutes here, before I ask for your final thoughts, each of you, is really how you would change your decisions, right? How you would reduce bias in your decision making, right? Sorry. Okay, so I just want to make sure. Because that's all the reduction of the bias. Okay, I was looking for this this visual here. Reducing bias and improving decisions is really the outcome, the ultimate outcome, right, of the solution. That's what we're looking for to do, right, for leaders as well as for team members. And so, in this case, you have you turn around a safety concern and you do a lot of real world evidence to show that it may work in pediatric and elderly patients as well, you set that he or strategy, market access, and then you'll translate a lot of the trends in the medical inquiries into strategy, right? Into a potentially new indication in Europe, right? So you need to also demonstrate how you would be prepared for that, right? And so if you look at the efforts here, right, what are the real contributions that everyone is making, right? So field medical team, right, versus medical information. This particular dashboard illuminates that how the daily contributions of medical affairs teams lead to company success and products, because they weigh the activity as well as the outcomes based on the parameters I already showed. So what you would see here is that the field medical team, which interfaces with customers, is potentially relatively low in their CC, in their corporate contribution compared to others, right? So what that would lead you to think about is maybe change their workflow, right? Maybe involve them in more higher impact activities with a higher grade of recommendations, right? Or potentially increase the size of that team, because there are only 3 field medical affairs members here, right? And when you adjust it for FTEs, it's quite low, right, compared to the others, okay? And so what you're able to do is you're improving the data. So at this point, I'm actually logged in as a team member, but what you would do is you would log in as a team lead, and you would be able to make those decisions. And I want to show you how you could reduce the bias and what you would, the notifications that you would be able to send to team members as well as to yourself. Right. So here are 3 different types of notifications, right? And I'll just concentrate on this last one, the KPI decision analysis and strategy. All right. So you would send this type of a notification every 3 months. You would choose the frequency, let's say, to yourself. Okay. And what you would see is a link that would take you to this type of a notification, which asks you which objectives would you like to add, right? So in this case, where you have a new business development agreement, you may add a new objective of European evidence generation strategy, right? How would you like to change activities? Maybe increase the impact value of a particular activity type, or add new KPIs that use an activity, right? Which outcomes would lead to those new strategies, right? And you would choose, for example, that European BD development, right? And you would keep a log of these types of activities, at all times, okay? As well as the completed activities, for example, right? Who did you work with? Which colleagues? What activities did you complete today? These would be types of notifications that your team members would receive, reminding them, like the examples we talked about, right? The sports examples, to enter that data in order to make sure that it's quality, right? That you have quality in integrity of the data with which you make decisions. Okay. So with that, I want to just pull up the topics of the next webinars. Well, we're going to get into some of these features in more detail individually. Okay. Here they are, as just for all of you to see. But I want to ask just the last question, and just maybe take a minute each to talk about the decision making. What is the value and potential and the opportunity now that those listeners have before the holidays, right, in December, as they look ahead into next year, of how they can make better decisions? How can they reduce the bias, improve efficiency, improve their strategy and forecasting? Jeff, maybe I'll start with you, and then maybe each of you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I think a tool like this helps us move out of the realm of subjective decision making into objective decision making. I think Another analogy, if I go out, and my goal is, fitness, with a lot of the fitness trackers, measure your steps. And if you're trying to get in 10,000 steps, although I know that that's controversial now, but I can go for, I can walk for an hour and I can guess, how far I've been, or I can measure it. And so I think that's what we're talking about is being able to make decisions based on real data.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah, Luz?
Yeah, I think this is a new way how to weigh contributions. You need to actually understand how to weigh every single thing that you're actually measuring. And I like the idea that there's a more rational way to do it, and I really like that. So I invite everyone who's listening to just check up on your teams if you're actually weighting absolutely everything, and how much does it actually weight all the KPIs that you're actually doing out there. That's just my food for thought for everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, I echo that, and also see that, we're in a text heavy world. We get 30 emails, 40 emails a day if you're lucky. With this tool, it's, if you are a busy leader in medical affairs space, you have a quick visualization tool dashboard that you can see where your teams are to help you make the decisions. And, you're taking out some of the decision biases, obviously, and you're also bringing more folks to the table to make some of these activities and linking them into the outcomes.
Great. Thank you. Well, I want to wish everyone happy holidays. We'll speak to you in January. And those of you who registered, you'll receive a copy of the Amedea Pharma's Medical Affairs Metrics Playbook. Please let me know what you thought about this webinar. Any questions you have, get in touch with me. Here is my contact information. If you want to learn about this demo in more detail, let's talk. I think it's a great time to do that as 2025 rolls in. So have a great holiday, everyone, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for helping us prepare this webinar as well, Jeff, Luz, Alex. Thank you.